Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HR Voices podcast. I am your host, Mary Asante, and with me here today, I've got the amazing Pippa Tanko. Hi, Pippa.
Hi, Mary. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast today.
Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you on here today. And basically, I will let Pippa introduce herself in a minute, and we will be talking about visibility. So redefining visibility and looking specifically at why your story matters more than your image. A brief introduction from yourself, Pippa, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Mary. My name's Pippa Tanko, and I'm from &Pip. And I'm a strategy-driven brand photographer and visibility coach. So what that really means is I just help people show up as their true selves online in order to attract the right kind of clients and business into their world.
Excellent. Thank you. And that is incredible because visibility is very important. There is just so much content, noise, etc. online that sometimes it's a struggle to come through as your authentic self, isn't it? And not be tempted to just copy what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to look at what's trending online and thinking, oh, I should be doing that. And this should is such a terrible word. We should ourselves into doing all sorts of things. But really, actually finding like what you have to share and what's actually going to be valuable to your audience rather than just shouting into the void with loads of noise. We see it so much with businesses who are suddenly posting all about Mother's Day, for example, or Valentine's Day, or there's a holiday. So they think, oh, we better create some content here. We've got something we can use. And I think the problem with that is unless Valentine's Day or Mother's Day actually has a big part of your captures your audience, like a florist, for example, Mother's Day and Valentine's Day are really important because that is when people give flowers. So that would be very apt. But as a brand photographer, I'm not sure Mother's Day really has anything to do with brand photography. Yes, some of my clients are mothers, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to then go and create a post around that because it's not aligned to my brand and what I'm trying to talk about or what I have to offer. It's just noise.
So basically, what I'm hearing you say is the importance of identifying who your target market is and then communicating with them or being visible in a way that speak to them, not just for the sake of it.
Yes, for sure. So definitely finding out who they are, but also then aligning it with who you are, right? Because the way that we attract like-minded people, if you think about it, we don't like working with people that we don't get on with. So we don't want to attract those people. We want to attract the people that are our people, that speak the same language, that have the same values and the same kind of vision or personality as us. But then aligning that with our audience. And it can get tricky because some people will be like, well, my audience is very different to me. And that's still okay. On some level, they will align, whether it's they're quite outspoken or bold, or whether they're quite shy and timid. It just, on a different level, they will align with you. So it's just finding that being yourself enough to attract those right people, but then talking about the things that actually add value to the people you're trying to attract.
Okay. So to that very point, authenticity is very important. So how can you become visible or remain visible in an authentic way?
It's funny, the word authentic is such a buzzword right now, right? So it's so overused and I really hate it. So I've been trying to think of what other word could I use, but it's really just being genuine about sharing your maybe your lived experiences or maybe your what you've learned on your journey. Because when it's rather than creating content saying you should be doing this or you should be doing that, a really great way to do that is say how I am doing this in my business so that people can learn from your journey. Because you could just be spouting things that you've learned from somebody else, but you've never actually done it for yourself and you've never actually created that. So it's a great way to really build trust through your visibility. So when you are creating content, you're speaking from your own lived experience, and that's very powerful rather than trying to be someone you're not. But it must be exhausting to wake up every day and try and be someone that you're not.
And I think the other way of also looking at it is if you're always trying to be like somebody else, at best, you can be the second best version of what you're trying to be.
100%, because no one else, you cannot mimic someone else 100%. You haven't got their same experiences. You haven't got the experience they have in their industry. Plus, you don't even know if they're actually doing really well. And that's the thing about online, right? Is that you can see all these people that are perfectly presented, but you don't know whether they're successful or not. Some of them may be very obviously successful, but mimicking someone because you think, oh, they look like they're successful. Maybe your success looks different to theirs.
I think that is a really, really important point, actually, to highlight, especially when we are thinking about the HR independent community, where some people sometimes are doing well or doing genuinely well. Others are struggling, but effectively faking it until they are making it. And the whole idea of if you take what you see online as the entire truth, you might be dragging yourself down, feeling so low and putting yourself down for a reason that really doesn't exist. So that is really important.
And actually, all those people that are succeeding, they've also failed, right? Success doesn't come without failure. You learn from your failures and then you build to success. So I think it's easy for us to think, oh, everybody online is so successful. Why am I not successful? Why is my business not going that way? And I have highs and lows in my own business. And I like to take people on that journey. And I find it very difficult to be raw when I'm in the kind of depth of it. But I find it easier to share that when I'm out the other side and I've gone through that experience. So I will still talk about the trials and tribulations and the failures because I've failed many times in the 25 years I've been in business. And I still talk about those and I talk about the journey that has come from those failures.
Absolutely. And so being visible, then, what role does your story really play in making you authentically you or truly you?
I think people often think, oh, my story's not that interesting. I haven't got an interesting story. I just came from an average home and an average life. And I've listened to all these stories online where people have, but everybody has got a unique story. No one else's story is exactly like yours. And if you can really bring that into your content and start sharing that, other people will relate to your story. Stories are powerful, they're way more memorable. So if you can I talk a lot about stories from my childhood, things that really touched me or made me who I am today, where I got my courage from, for example. And so I take the stories from my history and I think about how they've shaped who I am today. And then I tell those stories because I grew up in South Africa and a lot of my childhood was just barefoot in the dirt, playing in the sunshine, but you learn so much from just being out in nature. And I use that a lot in my mental health as tools now. And I talk a lot about that and that side of my journey. So for my journey with mental health and how I use that experience of being outside and being barefoot on the grass to help me with that element. Now, that's not necessarily business related. That's personal. That's something personal, but it's someone in my audience would probably relate to that because there's so many of us, especially in business, who are struggling with their mental health, and that impacts it in how we show up as well online. I share these stories to help other people understand that I've also come from a place of struggle, but now I'm willing to share that online. And those are the stories that actually get the most traction online because people can really relate and they learn about me, the person, before they learn about me, the business.
Yeah, that is a really important point. And again, want to explore, as in, there may be people who are confident in sharing their stories. I think you are absolutely right in highlighting that, yes, everyone has a story. And even when you think it's unimportant, that is probably the one that will speak to people the most. But if there's someone listening to us now who is thinking, yeah, it's all well and good, but you are confident to just go out there, share your story, etc., and they are not feeling that comfortable to share their story for different reasons. Sometimes it can be very personal, and not everyone might want their personal story out there. Sometimes it can just be, is someone going to, I don't know, call me a prima donna for putting this story out there, or pretentious, or whatever it is. How can someone start on their journey of sharing their story, however small or huge it is, to help them to be visible?
Sure. I think actually when we are raw and we are vulnerable, these are the stories that have the most power when it comes to reaching people. But it is a very difficult thing to decide to put that vulnerability out there online because we fear judgment. But the fear in our head is always way more than, and I'll do this when I have a personal brand photo shoot for myself, right? I will find the one image that gives me the total ick, that I look at myself and I think, cringe, I look terrible. And I will post that photo first. It will be the first one I post. And I do this because I like to use fear as a compass because I feel like it moves me further in my journey. But I will share that and I'll say to people, what do you think of this photo? And what's amazing is that all the things I had in my head that were going, oh, I look so full of myself. I look like I'm being a total idiot. I'm pulling a funny face. People will go, oh my God, you look like a rock star, or you look hilarious, or they can really relate. So it's almost just having to give it a try and then watch what happens and learn from that experience and not be afraid to fail at it the first time. But the people that stop scrolling to look at us are usually the people that care about us, that are interested in something that we have to say. So it's just finding that one thing that you are willing to share right now and putting it out there. And it just takes a little bit of courage. I'm really big on courage to do it. But once you start and you see the traction that it starts to make, and you see how people interact with it and can relate to it, or how sometimes your stories can help other people, that feeling is what keeps you going and able to share more and more vulnerable stories. And it's not easy, and it takes time. I run a group of visibility, and sometimes people come in the group and they're like, I'm really have this great story to share, and I just feel really uncomfortable about sharing it. And I'll say, that's when you know you're on the money. That's when you know your story is going to be powerful, because you're afraid to share it because it's being vulnerable. But those are the stories that have the most impact. So it's just taking that leap of faith and sharing one.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important, having the courage, having the confidence, and taking that leap of faith to say, look, I am going to put myself out there, because I believe as long as it's your story, as long as it's coming from a place that is important to you and you are sharing it in a way that you want to share it. Yes, there will be an element of being uncomfortable. There's an element of showing your vulnerability. And there is an element of actually will people relate to it. But like you just said, you wouldn't know until you at least try.
Yes, and I think something else that I do quite often when I'm trying to step into my confidence and share something that might be a little bit more vulnerable or do something that's a bit out of my comfort zone, I think about who it's for. So I stop making it about me and I stop making it about like, who could this help? How could this story help someone with their journey or show something I've learned through this failure story or story of vulnerability? I talked about mental health, and that's a very vulnerable topic. And it took me a long time to be able to share that part of my journey. But then I thought about it and I thought there's so many people out there that this story might help. And so I put the emphasis on who am I trying to help and how will this benefit them? And I take the impact off me. And I do this in lots of areas when I'm coming on a podcast, when I'm speaking on a stage. The minute I start to get anxious and nervous, I'm making it about me. The minute I try and make it about the people that I'm serving, the easier it is to overcome the fear.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, you're absolutely right. From mental health to struggles. I mean, I share personally a lot because my journey as a parent for a child with autism and ADHD. And that honestly is a journey that I don't think you truly understand unless you've lived that experience. And I do share it with people sometimes. I do share the struggles, the day in, day out struggles, etc. with it. And in almost every and any presentation, someone would come to me and go, oh, wow, listening to you, it reminded me of either my daughter-in-law, my friend, my this, my that. And then I turn around thinking, actually, by the time I've done it the third or so time, every single room I've been in, there is at least 1 in 4 people in that room who have or know somebody who is going through similar struggles.
Mm.
And it is really important to share it because raising awareness around the struggle. Okay, if the individual with neurodiversity, if the neurodiverse individual, or for them, they can choose to say, right, okay, I will let my employer know that I have a disability or I don't have a disability or I'm neurodiverse, etc. But for the carers, it's a different story altogether because you are going through struggles, going along the journey with your loved ones, but you are juggling everything else to go with that. And that almost is hidden and invisible a lot because you can be going through and carrying a lot without people even realizing that's what you are dealing with on a daily basis.
And the power of that is that then people feel like they're not alone. They're not the only one going through this difficulty with a child who's neurodiverse and having to maybe run a business and look after a neurodiverse child. Or they're not alone at the failures and trying to show up online, for example, and not being able to do it because they just don't have the courage. It's making them understand that we're all human. My favorite videos on Instagram is when you've got this beautiful curated, this nice looking lady, and she's showing you, she's in her kitchen and it's all beautiful. And then she turns her camera and you see all the mess and the washing hanging and the gardens full of kids' toys and things. And that is real life, right? That is what we want to be sharing. Then people are like, oh my God, that is totally my life. I'll have my house all tidy when I I've got visitors coming and the rest of the time it's chaos. That's just making us human. And when you can be authentic like that and share your stories and show your human side, people can relate to that and people feel less lonely, like they're not alone in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also talked about the fact that visibility or being yourself can be a business strategy.
Yeah, for sure. Because as we said, there's nobody else quite like you, right? So people buy from people, but they buy from people that they know, they like, they trust. So if you are building that know, like, and trust online, in person, it's easy. You go to a networking meeting, you meet someone, you just click, you get that back and forth. But online, it takes a little bit longer. Having that visibility and building that know, like, and trust means that you can take someone from having no idea that they might need your services to needing your services just through the education, getting to know you, building that know, like, and trust, and using it to take them through the buyer's journey to the point where they then think, right, I actually need an HR person in my business. I didn't realize how much I needed them, but I'm having these issues that all are telling me. And Mary has been showing up online. She's been sharing her stories. I really get her. I really like her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to her and see if she's available to help me with my HR. And I think that's where it becomes more of a business strategy, is when you are showing up as yourself, sharing your knowledge, showing how you can help people, and then they almost get to a point where they feel like they know you because they've seen so much of your content online, and that trust is there, and they'll reach out and then book you.
Excellent. So in terms of showing up, how do you show up?
So for me personally, I love content creation. I love writing stories. I love written, I love video, but that's not everybody, right? And I didn't like it all to start off with. I had to try new things. So I started off with a bit of writing because that was what I was confident with. Then I had my first ever brand shoot. Thought I better practice what I preach. And what was really interesting for me in that experience is that I thought I was just the stay-at-home mum with a little side project business. And then I got my brand images and I was like, wow, I'm actually the real deal. And I suddenly started to see myself as the business owner I was trying to become. And I actually realized I was that business owner today. So it did heaps for my confidence. So I started to share images online. The more images I shared, the more interaction I got, the more people started reading my stories. Then obviously we went into this frenzy of video creation. So I thought, well, let me give that a try. So I started talking to camera, and if I look back at the videos I created when I first started, I remember it was in lockdown. Oh my God, I looked hilarious. I was so formal. I had these like ringlets and I was like, hello, my name is Pippa. So like not myself at all. Whereas now it's really just about having a conversation with your audience, and you almost need to do it as if you're talking to your friend and you're telling them about what you do, or you're sharing this bit of knowledge with them. So that's what visibility is for me. You can be visible in real life too, making sure you're putting yourself in the right situations. You can go to networking, you can put yourself in situations where your ideal clients might hang out. That could be the gym, or it could be, I don't know, they could be into running and you're going to the park runs. So surrounding yourself with the people that you're trying to work with is really powerful, whether it's online or in real life.
Okay.
The thing is, if you don't, like, you can be the best HR person there is out there, right? You can be the best at what you do, but if no one knows you exist, how are you going to help anybody? So it's just finding the places where your ideal client's hanging out and then spending some time there and helping them get to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, because if no one knows you're out there, then they probably can't find you unless they accidentally stumble upon you somehow, isn't it?
And I find also then they're later in the buying journey, right? So they've already got to the point where they know they need someone in HR. So for photography, for example, they might think, oh God, I really need to have a headshot because I'm going on a podcast this week and they need a headshot. So I'm going to hire someone to a headshot. But if I've been speaking, they've seen my content online and they've seen what I'm all about, and they realize that there's so much more to brand photography than just a headshot. I've taken them through that process and educated them and taught them. They will probably get to the point where they decide they want someone to do headshots for them, but the person that's the obvious choice is going to be me because I've been speaking to them online for so long and I've educated and taken them through that process. Whereas if they're just reaching out for the first time, they're much more likely to compare on price because they haven't built that trust and they haven't understood what it is you offer over and above just picking up a camera and taking a quick photo.
I think that is also an interesting point. What you are saying is actually when you're visible, even though someone may not have met you before, and they've built the trust in you because they've seen you present, they've read your content, they've engaged with your content and like what you are doing.
And you've added value, right? They've learned from you. They've gained from your content. They've actually found it useful. It's not just been, oh, look, she's posting about Mother's Day today. Oh, look, she's whatever it might be. It's actually added value. So that's what builds the trust.
Yeah. So when you've managed to add that value to, and they're reaching out to you, it's less about price, how much you charge, etc. And it's more about they've subconsciously made or consciously made that decision to get you, in the example that you use, to be the person to take their headshots for what they want to do. So they come to you to say, hey, Pippa, I'm going on a podcast as a guest on whatever day of the week it is, and I need a headshot. Are you available to do it for me? And it's less about, hey, Pippa, I need a headshot. How much is it going to cost, etc.
100%. Exactly.
That's great. And the next bit is, how often must someone show up?
Great question. I could say show up every day or show up 3 times a week or show up 5 times a week. But if that doesn't work for you and your business and your lifestyle and what you've got going on, then what's going to happen is that you'll just stop doing it. So I think it's really important to start with what works and build your confidence. So if that's once a week, then that's once a week. Start with what works for you and start building in consistency. I'd say consistency is far more important than the number of times you post. So if you're going to post every Friday, and if you just get every Friday done, then you can think, okay, well, I'm managing this quite well. Let me try one more time. I'm going to post Wednesdays and Fridays. When that becomes a consistent, then you can add a Monday. And I'm a three posts a week with a little bit of thrown in things when I happen to be doing something cool I think my audience might like to see. But generally I try 3 times a week. But if I've got nothing to say next week, I won't say anything because there's no point in saying something just for the sake of it. But I find in my journey, the more content I've created, the more I've uncovered and found that would be beneficial to share with my audience. So I've got reams of content I haven't even used yet. But then you've also got, if you have a system for your content, you've also got that option to start repurposing and looking, okay, this piece of content was really valuable because I got loads of comments and likes on it. How can I take this content and repurpose it? And maybe it was a written post and now I can create it as a video, or maybe I can just reshare that written post with my thoughts since then, but it's altering it slightly, but taking the idea or the concept.
Okay. That is really important. So like you can have new content, repurpose old content, and also things that you find which may not take you so much time to produce, but you think actually this is very relevant to a conversation us having or to someone out there.
Yeah, and I think it's called the spotlight effect, which is when people think that you think everybody sees all your stuff that you're sharing all the time, but actually people are busy. they might miss it, they might scroll past it, the algorithm might not show it to them. Resharing old content is a great strategy, content that was valuable and that had, you can see from your analytics that it's actually done quite well. Repurposing that or resharing that again means that it's more likely to get more people seeing it. And some people also need to be reminded. I don't know if you found this, Mary, but I will learn something new and then it'll totally go out my head because I stopped doing it for a while. And then I see someone's content talking about that thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to do that. I must do that again. So it's also about reminding your audience who might be taking on board some of your teachings and then forgetting again about it. So having that regeneration of your content actually helps your audience remember to do the things you're teaching them to do.
Excellent. And that is actually quite important. The fact that, yes, you may learn something, and especially we touched on buzzwords earlier on, isn't it? Something becomes a buzzword and everyone jumps on it and everyone is talking about that. And that goes on and on for a couple of years. Then we move on to the next best thing or the next buzzword, and we all forget about that.
Yes, exactly.
The relevance of that buzzword a few years ago to what may be going on now might be really powerful. So repurposing content might be a great way of reminding people of the importance of saying things sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. It could be something that you want to remind them in the HR process that they should be doing. And then they start doing it and then it falls by the way. It could be holiday tracking, for example, and they start tracking holidays, but then suddenly they start growing as a company. That kind of falls by the wayside. They haven't got a system in place. And then your content, by resharing that, they're like, oh, actually, it would be really good to start tracking that again. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not an HR specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but it's things like that, just helping your audience remember to do the things that you're teaching. And then they'll be like, oh, actually, I need someone to help me manage my HR and creating a system or using a software to track holidays. Let me outsource some HR.
Yeah, that is an important point. But there's also that element, talk about buzzwords again, of when sometimes you see everyone talking about something and the same thing over and over again, you kind of feel, well, what do I have to say or what do I have to add to it that hasn't already been said or that needs saying? And is it a good time then to post? Or is it a good time not to post about that particular buzz that's going on?
I mean, I think if it is prevalent to your business, then it is a good time, but I would give my opinion on it. What's your opinion on that buzzword, whatever it might be? Personal branding is a big one, right? Personal branding became a big thing just around lockdown, before lockdown time. Does that mean I shouldn't talk about personal branding because it's so out there all the time? I mean, everything I do is around personal branding and how you share your story and how you show up and how you be more confident. So I'm going to keep talking about personal branding. I might not always label it personal branding, because I like to call it storytelling, because I feel like, but even storytelling to a degree is a buzzword at the moment. Everyone's trying to share their story. Everyone's trying to get on podcasts. Everyone's trying to discover their journey. But that is very important to what I do, and it's how I support people. So of course, I'm going to keep talking about it and reminding people that everybody has a good story, even if you don't think it is.
Great, that's good. And that sometimes there's also that element of actually, I need someone to give to do headshots or brand photography. Who do I get? And they suddenly go, Pippa has been talking about this or been doing this, showing up consistently over the past 25 years. So she knows her stuff, and I will go to her. So that there is that element of, even when there's a lot of noise, being consistent and then showing up more often and over a period of time establishes the footprint that is effectively needed sometimes.
For sure. And I think it helps if you are sharing your own ideas and your own perspective on things, because people will either align with that or they'll disagree with that. And that's okay too. I often say your content should attract the right people and repel the wrong people. So we talked earlier a little bit about like what happens if there's that fear of judgment when we're putting ourselves out there, but actually repelling those people that are judging you. You don't want to work with people that are judging you. So I think that's a really important thing just to mention as well. But just sharing your own experience and your own opinion about things and building that kind of trust through knowing a lot about the subject that you're talking about and having an opinion.
Yeah, sometimes when sharing stories, you can touch on very sensitive areas. And an example is the mental health that you mentioned. An example I talked about was neurodiversity, autism, ADHD, etc. Very sensitive areas for people. And I think sometimes people may worry about, because when you are sharing your story, let's take mental health. It's your story. It's how it affects you, how it affects your life, how it manifests in your day-to-day activities, etc. Now, the fact that I don't see it in the same light or don't experience it in the same way, etc., I think can sometimes make people nervous, because it will be like, this is my story. I am sharing my story, and I hope it will help people out there. But at the same time, worrying about, oh, what if people start criticizing me to say, well, he doesn't do that, and oh, you're making it up.
I think there's this very real worry that we think, oh, what if people think I can't do my job well, or I can't provide well because I've shared this secret, in my case, the mental health story. What if they think I won't be able to cope? And so that's what stops us sharing it. But actually, that's what attracts the right people to us, the people that think, gosh, she's brave to have shared that online. And I can see she's living what she's telling us to do, the things that she herself is doing and have been powerful for her. So it's actually my experience that I'm sharing, and people can see that I'm actually doing really well as a result of sharing those stories. So I think we worry, and I think certainly it was my worry before I should put that out into the realm, was that what if people are going to think, oh, she can't be a very good photographer because she struggles with her mental health. But actually, I manage my mental health very well, and photography is one of the things that helps me with my mental health. So it's actually a way that I get creative, and creativity helps me with my mental health. So I think we're scared of things that actually would connect us to people. And sometimes it's also worrying about whether your story might impact somebody else. For example, when I first started telling my kind of origin story of how I grew up, and I grew up to a single parent family. My father was killed in a fatal car accident when I was 8 months old. And my mum brought up two kids. She had two kids under the age of 3 as a single parent. And I was really nervous to share that part of my story because it felt like I was sharing something to gain something. I was sharing this very personal part of my life to gain business. And I worried about what would my mom feel about me sharing that side of the story. But actually, that's a very important part of my journey, because I did grow up in a single parent family, and that did change my life. I had a single parent my whole life who was incredible and was absolutely enough for me, but it gave me certain mindset ideas in my life that have turned me and shaped my story and turned me into, and the circumstances that surrounded that caused me to be the storyteller that I am. Because the reality is that my mum needed help. She didn't have another partner, so we got a nanny, and that nanny was an incredible storyteller, and she used to tell me stories of how the leopard got its spots and how the elephant got its trunk, and that's where my journey with story actually came from to begin with. So it's very important that I tell that story, but I was very nervous to share that part of the story because I was worried my mum might get upset that I was sharing it. But it's just having a conversation. I had a conversation with her and I said, I'm thinking about sharing this story. And she was like, absolutely, that's fine. So I think we can worry about sharing our origin stories and our life stories because we're worried about the impact it will have on other people as well.
Again, really useful points to touch on, which is, and I think it's a blocker sometimes to sharing stories more often than, oh, can I share the story? Because thinking about the impact on especially our immediate family members, our friends, etc., because none of us exist in isolation, right? So when you get very upset, very cross, whatever, something may have triggered that. And then how you came out of that would also have an impact, not just on you, but also on the people around you as well. So it's impossible to almost tell a story without upsetting someone in the process. And yes, in your case, sometimes you can have that conversation with the people like you did with your mom. Other times there may be circumstances that makes it almost impossible for you to consult those individuals impacted by your story before you put it out there.
For sure. And in that case, I think you just have to think about how is this story benefiting somebody? How can I make this about someone else? And is that going to then hurt somebody? And I think I wouldn't put anything out there that I knew was purposely going to hurt somebody. But if you make it your story and not their story, then I think it's okay to share. But I think everyone has to make that call for themselves ultimately at the end of the day. I would never put anything out that was going to be detrimental to somebody else. But sharing a part of my journey, I feel, is very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Pippa, very important and interesting topic, and I'm sure we can probably talk about it for a long time. But thank you for sharing your view on redefining visibility and how it can help you and your business effectively. Now, I love ending the podcast with your top 3 tips for our audience. So what would you say that would be?
Oh my gosh, top 3 tips. I would say my top 3 tips. So the first one is probably use fear as a compass. So think about the one thing you're avoiding doing. It's probably going to have the most impact on your journey. So if you are fearful about sharing a photo of yourself online, which it's hard to believe there's still people that struggle with that, but there are, then that's what you should do because that's probably going to have the most impact on your business. I always say feel the fear and do it anyway, but I use it as a compass. And so that would probably be tip number 1. Tip number 2 would be give your opinion on something. Maybe it's something you disagree with that's going on in your industry, but if you can give your opinion, no one can say that's wrong because it's your opinion. They can disagree with your opinion, but no one can say that's wrong. So I'd say give your opinion. And my 3rd tip would be just get a camera, put it in front of yourself and start talking and record some video because there's no greater way than to be visible than just practice. So grab your phone. We've all got them in our pockets. They're really easy to use. And just start recording and think about what ideas and see what comes up and start sharing it online. You never know what will happen.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much, Pippa, for sharing those top tips and also for speaking to us today about visibility and redefining your visibility. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to listen to or to watch HR Voices podcast. We love hearing from you. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a good review. And if there's any topic that you want us to discuss, please contact us at hrvoices at hrindependence.co.uk. Or if you want to be a guest on the show, do get in touch and would love to have you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.